You also hold an interesting position at the crossroads of humanities and sciences. For example, you have done research into the ways that digital technology might be utilized to preserve heritage. Could you highlight some of your favorite topics of research in this cross-disciplinary area?
Yes, well, I'd like, first of all, to start by saying that, I think digital technologies can contribute greatly to, to the safeguarding of ICH through archiving, raising awareness, dissemination, making ICH better known through exhibits and, applications. Apps. But I really don't think that, digital technologies will replace or should replace real live living practices, so I think this is something that I always tell my students, digital technologies can be wonderful, but, they shouldn't replace real live practices, which are still at the heart of ICH. And so, the idea is to try to use digital technologies to complement, accompany, complete what intangible heritage is really about, and it's really about living practices. So, I do believe that, digital technologies can be very useful. In, for example, conservation, they have contributed greatly to improving methods in conservation because, for example, it's always interesting because living heritage is made up of speech and gesture. If you can film living heritage, the ICH, then you have a very good record, which is much more complete than a written description or simply an oral interview, which is, and until digital technologies developed, especially the use of digital cameras, it was very, very expensive to do, ethnographic films, and it took a lot of money. You had to have specialized people to do it. Whereas now with digital technologies, with an $800 Sony camera, you can do a good recording, or even with a good iPhone, a good intelligent telephone, you can do a fairly good recording, of living practices. So it's become very affordable now, and you can preserve the information for long periods of time, and at low cost. So that's digital technologies have certainly contributed greatly to the preservation, archiving of ICH, and also making it more accessible through the web. Because now most of the inventories that are done on ICH are web-based, and you can access the elements that are inventoried through the web, and of course the elements that are listed in UNESCO are all accessible now through the web. You can have access to the written files, but also you have a video for each one of them, and so this is really very, very effective and very important for ICH when you compare it to, for example, built heritage, where a video doesn't really make a great deal of difference when you compare it to a photograph. But when you compare a photograph to a video in ICH, it makes a big difference because you're actually recording the practice. So. And also dissemination, you can disseminate, as I said, through the web, inventories, but also, it's possible to do virtual exhibits and disseminate them through the web, but also through mobile applications. Mobile applications have been an interesting way of using ICH in the interpretation of cultural practices, but also of sites. You know, I think many of the interpretation programs that have been developed for heritage have been, you know, based on built heritage or on natural sites or archaeological sites. There is now, I think, an effort to try to adapt and use ICH more in the interpretation of those sites. For example, recording the memory of the sites by local populations, recording also maybe sometimes traditional building techniques for renovating the buildings or rebuilding anew, but through the use of traditional building techniques. There's also information that can be, you know, interviews that can be done with people to see how they have traditionally used those sites. You know, so I think there's a lot of interesting work that can be done by combining, you know, the more traditional forms of interpretation of built heritage and archaeological and historical sites with ICH and introducing ICH in the interpretation of those sites. And then, of course, you know, there's the possibility of using, you know, mobile applications or websites, you know, for interpreting ICH itself. One of the things that I've discovered is that, well, for example, getting back to the interpretation of heritage sites, you know, of built heritage sites, very often on these sites, you know, there will be rituals that will be held or festivals, but they're only held like maybe once a year, very often just once a year, and sometimes over a short period of time, a couple of hours. And so if the visitor is not there, you know, while this is happening, while the festival or the ritual is taking place, well then, you know, you don't understand the site to its full extent. But if you can have a recording of that ritual and give the person the opportunity to play it while he's visiting the site, well then it you know, increases tremendously the potential of interpretation and of understanding the site, you see. So, for example, in Quebec City, we did this, the cathedral in Quebec City. The big event is Midnight Mass, you know, and that's sort of the big event of the year. So if you're not there, you know, for Midnight Mass, then you don't have the same sense of you know, of what the building is about, you know. So we actually recorded, you know, some of these rituals and events and put them on the mobile app so that people could actually, you know, have a short video of it and get a sense of what takes place. And then it gives a completely different and more complete vision of, you know, the meaning of the site, you see.